Welcome back and thank you for staying with us on Jailbreak. Now we're going to start this segment by taking a look at the front pages. Let's go into the Daily Trust newspaper where the major story here is on the tax reforms where there is someone, again, a governor, Bauchi State Governor, telling Mr. President to listen to Nigeria. I mean, we're still on that. You find the story on page 4 of the newspaper. Below the headlines there, we see the new year. Tinubu, Abbas, Atiku and others deliver message of hope. Bandits abduct many passengers, burn vehicle in Zamfara. The Professor Aisha emerges Uni Abuja VC as 67 Senate members kick. There seems to be a drama happening there. Now, below the major story, of course, we have a pictorial of our cultural, diversity, a very beautiful picture of culture there that I'm very sure was covered by one of our very own. Below the pictorial, we see federal government retaliates and cautions Nigeria against trips to Australia. We killed 10,937 terrorists in 2024. That's according to the military. CSO slam federal government for budgeting 146 billion naira for Lagos Metro Line. Gombe, Bauchi seek lifting of crude oil from Kolmani. Now, these are some of the stories that you'd find on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
All right, we'll move on to the Guardian newspaper this morning. And the Guardian is leading with stories on the economic sector. It says, eyes on key economic indices as Tinubu promises new dawn. You find the details of that on page 6. And of course, you have that image there of how various cities in the world welcomed 2025. I think it started in Australia, while we were still midday in Nigeria. And I mean, it got to our turn. And 5-6 hours ago, it got to the turn of some states in the US. And I mean, the trend continues. Interesting developments across the world. We hope 2025 will be nice.
Amen to that.
To other stories, Ondo residents, doctors begin indefinite strike over welfare. Bauchi governor denies threatening Tinubu, insists on stance against tax reform. Partial compliance trailed parts payment of 250 billion US dollar debt as first deadline expires. Adelabu blames vandalism for failure to increase power generation to 6,000 megawatts. Nigeria on life support before Tinubu election, says Akpabio. It's interesting to know that Akpabio was part of the government that offered that life support.
Indeed. I mean, it's like he's forgotten for a minute.
Investors made 22 trillion from Nigeria's stock market in 2024 despite firms' exit. And troop kills 10,937 terrorists, arrests 12,538 in 1 year. I mean, that's the size of a community.
Indeed.
Gale of defection to ruling party will hurt democracy. Cherished ones. And this goes to offtake 95% of allocated energy of face neck sanction. You want to know who is saying that? Get today's copy of the Guardian newspaper.
All right, let's move on. I know Sunday has a lot to say when it comes to the electricity sector, but let's take a look at the Punch newspaper this morning. Major story is on the New Year message where President Tinubu promises massive food production and 15% inflation in 2025. Riders are talking about President pledges better access to credit, eyes about $1 trillion economy, PDP tax the federal government on insecurity and others. Below there we see a pictorial of global celebration of the new year in China, South Korea and Vietnam, which they did before Nigeria. Below there we see Australians, Chinese, Koreans open New Year celebrations. The NERC orders discos to buy 95% power generation. 2 arrested for defrauding Canada-based Nigerian of 110 million naira. Lassa fever, cholera, and others killed 952 in 2024. That's according to the NCDC. Top of the page there we see 2027 opposition can't unseat president or can't unseat Tinubu without merger, says the PDP chair. That's Damagun saying that. We see the federal government invites Nigerian leader for talks to douse the tension. Punch appoints Wumi Tunde Obey, executive director, and Nigeria is on life support. I mean, Akpabio is really keen on that part, saying that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu changed, the narrative of the country. Now joining us virtually to address these issues and analyze them, we have Ben Shameng. He is the former director of News Voice of Nigeria. Good morning and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year to you as well. Now we seem to have a lot.
Morning, Mr. Ben. Let me start by saying that I know the game you're playing this morning. Instead of showing up in the studio with your ram meet, you decided to talk to us virtually, but that's okay.
We'll
find the transport. I think I've learned from you.
Find the transport to storm your house.
I've learned from you. When you disappeared and came back, then the refinery started working. So maybe you were working behind the scene.
Now we know what happened there. All right, let's start by taking a look at this major story on the Punch, talking about what Mr. President has promised. New Year is coming with a lot of hope, and Nigerians, even when 2024 was not really the most pleasant year for them, there is still this hope. We saw the joy of holding on to massive hope that 2025 will be better. So President Tinubu is promising that there's going to be massive food production and 15% inflation in 2025. This is something that has, not every Nigerian was touched by how expensive food has been. What is your take on this promise, and how do you think the president can deliver on this promise?
Yes, you see, in my own part of Abuja here in Lugbe, the atmosphere was so full of loudspeakers praying to enter the new year with hope. And I tell you, it's the first time I'll hear this array of preaching from Muslims and Christians. The loudspeakers were just clashing here and there. In other words, Nigerians are very, very hopeful people. And if that is the case, therefore, let us not just be hopeful because there is God. Yes, He is there. Let us also be hopeful because God has used Nigerians to bring a government on ground. So the government is now saying there's going to be a better 2025. And talking of 2025, if we have to have a good food security, of course, there has to be way out in terms of farmers, herders, clashes. It has to be done. We also have to fight corruption to a standstill. This is very, very vital. Apart from that, terrorism is another thing that is eating Nigerians so much. In fact, the very fabric of this nation. Let us recall that in December, look, hundreds of foreigners who hired a story building were there defrauding global citizens, and the base where they operated from is Nigeria. So now we know that many people defraud many other people globally using Nigeria as the base. So it is a thing that, on a hopeful note, that Nigeria will fight to a standstill. Apart from that, this trafficking in persons, hard drugs, you can see NDLA is doing a very nice job. The only thing we are waiting to hear from them is the level of people being taken, those arrested being taken to court for due diligence in terms of prosecution. We need to have all of that on ground. And citizens, when can we begin to have a change in heart? Because truly, it's like some people want to lose hope on the side of government. Government, therefore, has to do a lot to ensure that that trust is not lost.
All right. On the tax front, it appears that the front and back between the federal government and the Bauchi state government is not going to abate anytime soon. Some persons in the presidency have said the Bauchi state government is threatening the federal government. And the Bauchi state government is saying no, but we will continue to show our dislike, as it were, for the tax reform bill. Do you see any solution ahead of us with regards to this impasse?
I don't think there's going to be a point of convergence between the Bauchi state government and the federal government. I mean, what is the voice of opposition for? Is to keep the government on its toes, and that is what the governor of Bauchi is doing. And if therefore some people feel that, look, you too, you are heading a government, are you doing the best there in your state? Okay, where's your own source of revenue? How much do you generate and send to the federal government coffers for sharing? But the governor will also be quick as saying, if the infrastructure available in Lagos were to be sent to Bauchi State, I mean, they're going to have it nice in terms of revenue generation. But one is again worried, again, as some people will say, where a company is cited is where a much chunk of the tax, I mean, what do you call revenue will be allocated. So if therefore you have many headquarters of companies in Lagos, it comes out that Lagos will naturally get the largest chunk. And that's why some people are saying, okay, so you have farming up north, and you carry the grains to the south, and even do what you call a brewery thing. And those people are taxed over there. How does the north benefit from this? You carry the cows from north here to the south, and so how do they benefit in all of this? So it's like they are just suppliers of raw materials without, I mean, gaining so much from it. But then people say it's a federation. You have to bring it into a pool and share. But in sharing, there is a percentage. The fact that it originates from you does not mean you are the highest, you have the highest allocation. But where it's being processed, they receive more of the allocation. So this front and back thing will continue. And that is, and the North is so much bent on having that, bearing in mind that it has always been like the government of Aminu Kano, almost sharing kind of a thing. But we're talking of generating the wealth itself. So the North too should generate its wealth.
Indeed, it should be some kind of a wake-up call for our northern leaders. Now let's move on to the NLC, setting agenda for the federal government as Tinubu rallies Nigerians to stay positive, for the year. Now NLC are insisting as they're seeking for a wage review amid economic hardship. We all know how they've settled on the 70,000 minimum wage, which a lot of states are yet to implement, and now they are pushing for another reform. How do you think that would go?
Well, it's just going to be the usual marching in the streets if NLC insists. But it's not as if NLC is ignorant of how much is entering into the country. And NLC too also have to tell us too exactly how much is entering, sources of revenue, and how much is on ground. But again, some will say if the cost of running governance is reduced, this will permeate into down to the worker. But a situation where just a little, what's the fraction of people who really work for government? You see that is little compared with each time a little amount is added, and the ripple effect generally on the country that it has. I think that we should look at how best to increase our GDP, that's gross domestic product. What are we doing to ensure that we employ people? What are we doing to ensure that the informal sector of the Nigerian economy works very fine? Because it's not everyone who would love to work for government, and the rich people are always from outside government. any super rich person in government, you question his sources of wealth. Government is all about service and not making wealth. But when it goes to the private sector, that is where the money is. And we expect that the government should simply give the enabling environment, no double taxation, give infrastructure, the roads, the telecommunication services, to ensure that people work effectively, so that money will come, not just every time we have to go on strike in order to make things work. After all, the minimum wage has a timer lapse, so to speak. They say within so period you have to increase again. They just increased last year. Many governments have not, state governments have not implemented that. Now we yearning for another one. It's a right to yearn for it, to look for it, but we also have to work for it, because there's a limit as to how a developed child too will all a grown-up child too will know the limit of the parents in terms of what they have, and you continue to make very high demands. Except otherwise, the son knows that the father, the mother, they're hiding some money, some wealth, some assets somewhere.
All right, Mr. Ben, I would like to type your 2 cents into what appears to be a mild drama between Nigeria and Australia. 24 hours ago, was it? Or 48 hours ago, Australia issued a travel advisory against Nigeria, warning its citizens to beware, of visiting places in Nigeria where they can be exposed to terrorist attack, as the case may be. And that didn't seem to sit well with us. Nigeria retaliated, also warning its citizens from visiting Australia over what they call hate, targeted hate or discrimination and all. You recall that there was a time that a very important global partner nation in Nigeria issued similar advisories, and we saw embassies closing in Nigeria. Panic started, people rushing back homes, for something we didn't even understand whether there was anything really going on, and that's sort of, every time these things happen, they have impact on our national ratings, and people don't see these connections. They also have impact on eventually, how seriously people take you with regards to some of those concerns. Do you think we're doing the right thing? Really, retaliating, as the case may be, in using the diplomatic, tit for tat? Are we beginning to then return to these countries what they seem to be doing to us?
You see, when Murtala Mohammed became head of state, he simply said Africa has come of age. Nobody would detect to it what it should do. So Australia cannot wake up down that ocean over there and begin to warn their citizens about Nigeria. There are also Nigerians in Australia. If there's no rapprochement and you think the friendship is gone awry, I think that Nigeria is right. There's a limit as to how you keep on abusing someone and you just be accepting. If you don't begin to retaliate, and as you say, no, look, time has come that you stop that nonsense, then you continue. And when it continues that way, I mean, it's like gaslighting. Somebody is manipulating your senses. Somebody is always telling you are a fool, and you accept it that way. You have to prove that person wrong. For Australia to start warning their citizens in Nigeria about terrorism, about all sorts of things, they have a right to do that. Nigeria too has a right to retaliate. After all, in friendship, if you block, Nigeria should be like a moving water. If you block this way, it turns the other way. And Nigeria being the sixth most largest population in the world, Australia will see more of Nigerians. Every other nation on earth will see more of Nigerians. They have not seen anything yet.
Indeed.
So you just have to accept us. All we also appeal to Nigerians is that when you go there, conquer and conquer positively. Show them you are a Nigerian. Show them that you are Africa. Show them you have that man of being a Nigeria, but positively. You are there to earn a living. And so all those warnings, they are just nothing. And Nigeria to just warn, however they rate you, that's how they also rate you. And so
Right.
I think it's a good omen.
Yeah.
Tit for
Okay.
tat. Let it be.
Okay.
Retaliatory
I
diplomacy.
thought we chose not to go violent ways this year. But thank you so much, Ben Shavak, for joining us this morning to analyze the front pages.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that was really interesting one there. I mean, it came at a time when Nigerians were celebrating on social media how we garnered attention because over the festive period, talking about December, we saw an influx of lots of foreigners coming to Nigeria to enjoy the dirty December, as they
That was a
call
big
it.
deal.
Of course, it is a big deal.
If you have traveled to some of these places during festivity, there is nothing
Nothing to
interesting.
write home. That was what people were saying.
Absolutely nothing.
And I know
And
I
that
called on the government to pay attention to tourism because now that we are having this
is
attention.
big deal. Before we round up, and I can show you why. You will now notice why the dollar lost over 100 naira in the last couple of weeks. It's because we have more people bringing in cash. Anthony Joshua was in town, Bukayo Saka was in town, top footballers were in town.
Yeah.
And you see them moving with body bags.
Well.
These hotel, party grounds, food vendors, transport. That's an economy. The party economy in Nigeria is over 200 billion. So take it for granted that your own parade, there should be, and all of that. It's a big deal.
And we're globally known to be,
flight
masters
inwards,
when it
flight locally. That's some liquidity, in spite of whatever 2024 has been. So we should recognize that and build systems around it. And that's why that's important. We don't issue any fraudulent travel advisory around us. We are surviving in this economy.
I think it's a deliberate attempt because of the attention we've gathered over the years. But because
that's been an interesting show. And thank you very much, of course, for keeping time with us, for allowing us free access into your living room and of course into your mind, and for being part of the program by calling in to contribute and share your perspective with us. We will do this again tomorrow. I'm Sunday Michael Ogun.
And I am Sumaya Abubakar. Thank you so much for staying with us. Please stick around. Top of the hour, Emmanuel Fashemi would bring you 360 Sport. Do have a lovely new year.